Okay. Got it. Okay, day 3 of Ramayana. So we are on chapter 3. Day 3, chapter 3. Valmiki, today's chapter is called Valmiki composes the great poem. Valmiki touched water to purify himself. He then spread darba grass. So everyone's remembers what happened yesterday, right? So quickly summarizing, Brahma came and asked Valmiki to write Ramayana and said that the meter flowed out of his mouth in a beautiful way, in a poetic form, because Brahma made him do that. So he came and said, I made you do that, and I'm going to reveal everything about, including the thoughts and emotions of each and every character in Rama's life, and all the characters in his life. And I would like you to write this beautiful epic for the world. That's what he told Valmiki. Now, this chapter is about Valmiki composes the great poem. So Valmiki touched water to purify himself. He then spread darba grass on the floor and sat on it facing the east. He closed his eyes and went into a deep trance. He thought of the task assigned to him, and he told himself, as the Lord has commanded, I will compose a poem in the meter which came to my mind and in the shloka form. It will be the story of Rama and his achievements, and I will name it Ramayana. The more he thought about it, the clearer became his vision and his intellect, and he could see with his mind's eye all the many events which had taken place. He could visualize the old king Dashratha with his wives around him, looking at his 4 sons with eyes filled with joy and pride. And he saw Rama and Lakshmana with Sita in the Dandaka forest. It was as clear to him as the palm of his hand. The great Rishi related to the world the glorious story of Rama, and the poem was full of noble thoughts and noble deeds, like the ocean is full of rare and costly gems. Valmiki remembered the manner in which Narada had spoken of Rama, and in the same strain he composed the Kavya. It was made up of beautiful sounding words, words which were pleasing to the mind as well as to the ears, words which were faultless in their formation, and their meaning was as clear as the waters of a placid lake in the Himalaya. In a short while, he was able to compose a poem. He had completed the epic Ramayana, which spoke of the story of Rama, of the killing of Ravana. There were 24,000 words. I'm going to question you, okay? So listen carefully. There were 22,000 verses, shlokas in the Kavya, and the Rishi was pleased with what he had done. He divided the Kavya into 6 sections. 500 chapters were needed to relate the story in its completeness. After the completion of the Kavya, Valmiki was wondering about the proper person who would be able to recite the poem and thus propagate it. Even as he was thinking on it, 2 youngsters, Kusha and Lava, came to his presence, prostrated before him, and took the dust off his feet. The youngsters who were princes had been with the Rishi to learn the sacred lore. They had very attractive voices, and since they were twins, their voices blended together very well. To them, Valmiki taught the Kavya by name Ramayana. They learnt it and they sang it to the accompaniment of the Veena. They sang like Gandharvas. These 2 handsome, sweet spoken boys with their large eyes were the sons of Rama. After they had learnt the entire Kavya, I would like Surya to go and find out the exact description of what a Gandharva is and let us know, okay, at the end of the chapter. The 2 handsome, sweet-spoken boys with their large eyes were the sons of Rama. After they had learnt the entire Kavya, the youngsters began to travel from ashrama to ashrama, singing all the while the story of Rama. Once Rama was performing the great yaga by name Ashwamedha, the horse sacrifice, the young princess dressed in tree bark and deer skin went to the spot, and there, in the midst of the many rishis assembled there, they sang the Ramayana. The rishi listened with tears in their eyes and to this glorious tale filled with all the nine emotions which a kavya should have. They praised the youngsters. The fame of these two young boys was the only topic of conversation among the rishis and others who had heard them, and the news reached the ears of Rama the king. He saw them too with their veenas and he heard their voices from a distance. His curiosity was soon kindled and he went for them. They came to his palace and he welcomed them. In the council hall was seated Rama, surrounded by his ministers and his dear brothers. He had assumed the garb proper for one performing the yaga, and he was charmed by the looks of the youngsters. He spoke to his brothers and said, they glow with radiance which is unearthly, and their voice is heavenly too. Let us listen to them singing. The song, which was accompanied by the hypnotic drone of the Venas, filled the hall. As the tale progressed, Rama, who was seated on the throne, descended unobtrusively from there step by step and sat on the floor with the others, listening to the glorious Kavya. He sat spellbound and he listened to, as though it were the story of someone else and not himself. Tears was flowing from his eyes when he sat down to listen to the Ramayana. This story concerns the great lines of kings, which whose founder was Manu and which has been immortalized by the name of Ikshvaku, the son of Manu, and later by Sagara and others. Thus began the Kavya, and Rama sat and listened as though he were a figure carved out of a block of marble. Okay, so question time. So Valmiki finished the story, Ramayana. How many chapters? Not chapters. How many sections were there in Ramayana? Yes, Laya.
6.
Excellent. And how many verses were there in the shlo? Yes, Surya?
22,000.
Is he right, Laya?
Yes, he is.
Okay, it's actually 24,000. Okay,
I
so
thought
You said 22,000.
You said
Yeah.
24,000 words.
verses, yes, thank you.
you
So it
said
is 24,000. Okay, so remember 2 dozen. So it's easy to associate like that. And 6 chapters,
You
6
said
sections.
24,000 words.
No, 24,000 verses. Okay, verses is one full line. So what else? Who is Lava and Kusha? Where were they growing? Lava and Kusa, who are they? Yes, Surya.
they were growing in the hermitage.
Of?
Uh,
Yes, of who?
um,
Of Valmiki himself.
one.
So he taught them to sing the whole kavya, right? Okay. And what is the meaning of Gandharvas? He described them like they are, like they sang like Gandharvas.
It's a Gandharva is a member of a class of celestial beings in dharmic religions such as Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism.
What
Who's
beings are they?
they're member of celestial beings in
Celestial.
dharmic religion, and
Okay, is there,
whose males are divine performers such as musicians and singers, and the females are divine dancers.
and what are the females called?
Uh, I think it's Gandharvi.
I don't think so. Can find out. But thank you for finding. So Gandharvas are celestial beings who are beautiful singers. So he is comparing Lava and Kusha. they sang like Gandharvas. Yeah. Okay. So that's the end of chapter 3. Let's continue to chapter 4. Dasaratha and his grief. There was a country by name Kosala, and on the outskirts of the country flowed the river. So really the story is starting here. Yeah. Outskirts of the country flowed the river Sarayu. The land belonged to the Ikshwakus, the descendants of Manu, one of the Prajapatis. Kosala was beautiful and it was famed for its beauty, the richness of its soil, its luscious greenery, the abundance of its crops, its wealth, and its properties, prosperity. The kings of the solar race, Surya also, I would like you to get the description of Prajapati. Okay. The
Okay.
kings, Prajapatis, Prajapati. Okay, continuing. The kings of the solar race who had always ruled it were famed the world over for their valor and for their righteousness. The capital of the land of Kosala was Ayodhya. Tradition had it that Manu, the great lawgiver, had created the city. It was a wondrous city with flowering trees and with wide, beautiful roads where the king rode every day. The roads were well laid out, and the royal pathway was very ever beautiful with flowers and scented water sprinkled on it all the time. So Ayodhya was like Amravati, the city of Indra. Ayodhya was ruled by Dashratha, even as Amravati was by Indra. Dashratha had earned for himself the name Rajarshi since he had always been a God-fearing man. He was a wise king. He had charmed his subjects by his good nature. As befitted a scion of the race of Ikshvaku, he had earned the praise of all the many rishis and good people for his prowess coupled with gentleness. He had performed all the yajnas which a king had to perform, and he was a king beloved by all. The people were happy and contented. None of them was jealous, and not one was avaricious. They were all rich and they spoke nothing but the truth. Everyone was wealthy and everyone was noble. There was no meanness, no lust, even ugliness was absent. The people were all well read and no one was an atheist. There was no unhappiness in the mind of even one of them, such as a good king. Such a good king was Dasharatha, the descendant of Ikshvaku. Dasratha had 8 ministers who were well versed in the art of advising the king in matters of importance. They were highly intelligent, great diplomats, and they were all the time interested in the well being of their king and his subjects. The ministers were Dhriti, Jayanta, Vijaya, Siddhartha, Arthasadhaka, Ashoka, Mantrapala, and Sumantra. The king also had great priests to advise him on matters pertaining to religion and religious rites and rituals. The chief of them were Vashishta and Vamadeva. They were great scholars and they were famed for their learning, for their pride and self respect, for their self control, their penance. They were glorious men who had thoughts only for the good of others, the king and his subjects. The king's ministers were so efficient that there was nothing which escaped their notice. They knew about the happenings in all the neighboring countries. The treasury of the king was ever full, and so was the granary. Such a great king who had everything he could wish for was not perfectly happy. He had no son to make him happy. The line of the Ikshvakus threatened to terminate with him since he had no one to succeed him. King Dashatha was unhappy because of this, and his sorrow ate into his vitals day and night. And as he grew older, his sorrow increased too. One day, while thinking on this, the king thought, why should I not perform the yaga by name Ashwamedha? I've been told that it is a rewarding yaga. Perhaps my prayers may be answered if I perform the horse sacrifice. He called for a meeting of his counselors. When they had all come, the king asked them to be seated and sent Sumantra to fetch the rishis who surrounded him during the performance of religious rites. He said, Sumantra, bring me the revered gurus Vashishta, Vamadeva, Suyagnya, Jabali, Kashyapa, and their disciples too. Within a short while, Sumantra brought all of them to the great council hall. The king received them with all due honor, and after seating them properly, paying attention to their status, the king spoke to them. Surrounded as I am by the wealth of this land and by many beautiful objects of pleasure, still my mind is sorely troubled by sorrow. I have no son, and that makes me unhappy. I feel that the performing of the Ashwamedha may be an answer to my prayers. This is just a thought that has occurred to me. It is up to all of you to weigh in carefully and tell me if I have thought right. They approved of his suggestion and said, O king, this desire of yours to perform the Ashwamedha for the purpose of continuing the glorious line of the Ishwaku is indeed commendable. That you should have thought of it in itself a sign that your wish will be granted. It is but right that we should hasten and make preparations for the yaga to be performed. Let us from now collect the materials for it. The horse should be found. Let the Yajnasala be built on the northern side of the river Sarayu. The king was very pleased with the spontaneous approval of those assembled in the hall. With his eyes wide open with joy, he spoke to his ministers. Take the advice of my acharyas and make all the arrangements. Construct the Yajnashala on the northern side of Sarayu as has been suggested. All the rituals must be performed properly. Any lapse will cause severe repercussions on all of you. Be careful to listen to the biddings of the mentors, Vashishta and the others. We will obey you and the great ones, said the ministers, and the great hall emptied itself slowly. There was a strange glow of happiness on the face of the king. Something inside him seemed to assure him that he would be blessed with a son, and with that thought uppermost in his mind, he entered the inner apartments and told his wives about his decision. When he was alone in his chambers, came to the king his charioteer Sumantra. He said, My lord, I remembered suddenly something which I had heard long ago. I thought it but right that I should come to you immediately with the information I have. The news is very ancient, and so it had slipped from my memory till now, but when you spoke of the yaga, I remembered it. Many years ago, the famous rishi by name Sanat Kumara had spoken about the birth of your son in the presence of several rishis. He said Kashyapa, the revered sage, has a son by name Vibandaka. He will be the father of Rishyashringa. This son of Vimandaka will live in the forest with his father. He will not know any other human being, and he will look to his father for the smallest action which he has to perform. He'll be innocent in the ways of the world. In course of time, a king will be ruling the country by name Anga. His name will be Romapada. Because of a slight misdeed of the king, his country will suffer. A terrible famine will visit the country of Anga, and the king will ask the advice of holy men as to how he can pacify the gods and bring rain to the country. And the holy men will say, O king, if the son of the sage Vibandaka is brought to the country, rain will follow in his wake. The young man is called Rishishringa, and if you bring him to your country and give your daughter Shanta to him in marriage, there will be an end to the dread famine. The king will wonder as to how this can be achieved. He will request his wise ministers and preceptors in the court to go to the forest to bring the young sage. But the anger of Vibandaka is too well known, and no one has the courage to go. They will advise the king to send the courtesans of the palace to the forest, and they'll succeed where others are afraid to venture. Rishishringa will later preside over a yajna which will be performed by Dashrata, and because of this, the king will be father of sons. Sumantra continued, My lord, if you should, with the permission of Guru Vashishta, approach the Rishi Rishishringa and beseech him to perform a yajna for you, the prophecy of Sanat Kumara is certain to come true. Let me assure you that Sanat Kumara has said that you will be the father of 4 sons who will be valiant and who will be famed the world over. Please go to the kingdom of Anga and do not hesitate or delay. So lot of information, right? Story inside a story. So just to make sure that we kind of have everything um, understood and that we are not just reading and forgetting, I'm going to ask you for a few questions. Okay. Are you ready? Everyone unmute. Why was King Dasharatha unhappy?
Because he didn't have a son.
And did you like the way they described how beautiful the kingdom of Dasharatha is?
Yeah.
The land of Kosala, Ayodhya,
Yeah, it was very nice.
and the whole description of how how the city looks, how the roads look, how the trees and flowers are, and how when he calls the sages, how he invites them inside and gives them, takes care of them, like, properly makes them sit down, gives them all the respect that he needs to give before he starts speaking. Yeah, I thought that was very, very beautiful.
Respectful.
Yeah, and it shows us, right, like how we should conduct ourselves as well, like as a king, as a
Yeah,
leader.
it shows that he respects people even if they may be like a less important than him.
Well, sages are very well respected, so they are
Oh well,
considered.
no, that's not what I meant. Like he's
Yeah,
not.
yeah, I understand
Yeah,
that the king has very good manners. So it shows like it's demonstrating all the manners of each person, how they talk and all that. Okay, next question is, do you remember some of the ministers? How many ministers did he have in his court?
8.
Excellent. And do you remember any of the ministers' names?
Uh, Sumandara.
Okay, and any more?
Vashishta.
Say that again.
Was one of them Vashishta?
Excellent. Vashishta was the guru. He was the priest for the kingdom. He's not the minister, he's a priest, but good answer. Any other minister's name you remember? Dhriti, Jayanta, Vijaya, Siddhartha, Artha Sadhaka, Ashoka, Mantrapala, and Sumantra. Okay. Surya said Sumantra because he calls Sumantra and sends him to do, say, what?
I remember Sumandra because I thought of his wife.
Okay, no. Next question is, Dasharatha sends Sumantra to go and call whom to his court?
I forgot his name, but it was a person that lives in the forest with his dad.
Okay. So that's why so many stories we read. No. Sumantra went and called all the gurus, Vashishta, Vamadeva, Suyagnya, Jabali, Kashyapa, and their disciples. He called all of them so that Dasharatha can ask them if he can do the Ashwamedha. Ask them if it was a good idea. Okay.
Okay.
So they all said okay immediately, and they said the Yajnashala should be built where? On the northern side of the river Sarayu. Next to Ayodhya is the river Sarayu. They said that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they are building that, and at that time, Sumantra comes and tells him the story about this saint called Rishi Shringa, right? So he says that there was a premonition, like there was somebody had already predicted that Dasharatha will have not one son but 4 sons, and he tells this little story about who is going to come and do that yajna, and this person called sage called Risha Shringa, and who is he? He is sage Kashyapa son's son. Sage Kashyapa son is Vibandaka, and Vibandaka's son is Rishishringa, who always grew in the forest, and he did not. So he was like he didn't know the worldly ways, or he was not a cunning, lying. He is such a pure person. So said that if he comes and gets part of uh, the yajna, that the kingdom of Anga, which did not have any rain and was struggling, if he came and did the puja, the yajna, the rains came, and he was saying, if the same person, if we call him for an yajna here, Dashrata will have 4 sons. Yeah. So we need to remember what we are reading also. So as we keep moving, there'll be lots of stories within stories. It gets more interesting, but we don't want to, um, forget most of the information as we keep going. So tomorrow I'll ask you a little bit of a summary of what we did today, and then we'll continue with chapter number 5, the Ashwamedha Yaga. Okay, so with that, we will finish today's class with, it's in page 19. And let's chant Om 3 times. Om.
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 Take a deep breath in. Om.
Om.
Repeat after me or with me. Om Purnamada Purnamidam
Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya
Adaya
Purnamaya
Name Avashishte. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Good night.
Good night.